You, oh, you know, she got to get,
You
yeah.
wanna like say something, like tell us something or something? No. Let me see. Here we go, ready?
Yeah.
One, it sure does, it's a beautiful system. Thank you, ladies. You hear me? Yes.
Do you want to give her by her name? Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, look at your name. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so stay still.
We're gonna do this every time. We're gonna FaceTime you. Right? It's gonna be, it's gonna sit on the because if we go to this, you
And I think it has something to do with Emerald. I could be wrong. They said there's a red movement here, and it has something to do with Well, I do like Scott. Well, and also put on your hat. The news director. You made it. Because they put me actually in there. I know, right? I'm drunk in it.
Are these on? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know a lot of you are here for very specific reasons, and we're going to begin by swearing in the recently electeds.
I, Christopher Coos,
I, Christopher Coos,
having been elected to the office of President
having been elected to the office of President
of the Board of Trustees
of the Board of Trustees
in the town of Normal,
in the town of Normal,
County McLean,
in the county of McLean,
do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of President of the Board of Trustees
of the office of the President of the Board of Trustees
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities. Thank you.
Right. I, Kevin McCarthy,
I, Kevin McCarthy,
having been elected to the office of Trustee
having been elected to the office of trustee
in the town of Normal,
in the town of Normal,
County McLean,
County of McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Trustee
of the office of trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
I, Scott Preston,
I, Scott Preston,
having been elected to the office of Trustee
having been elected to the office of trustee
in the town of Normal,
in the town of Normal,
County of McLean,
County of McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United
and
States
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Trustee
of the office of trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
I, Kim Kimberly Cummings,
I, Kimberly Cummings,
have been elected to the office of trustee
having been elected to the office of trustee
in the town of Normal,
in the town of Normal,
County of McLean,
County McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of trustee
of the office of trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. I know.
I'll mention that to Missy. So we'll break them easy.
Call to order, regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for May 1st, 2017. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here.
Councilmember Fritzen?
Here.
Councilmember McBride?
Here.
Councilmember Cummings?
Here.
Councilmember Lorenz?
Here.
Councilmember Preston?
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As always, our first order of business is the omnibus vote agenda, and these are items that are considered routine and will be handled by one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I'd like to be excused on voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor.
Move approval?
Second.
Items we're considering under omnibus vote agenda this evening are approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 17th, 2017, and approval of the Town of Normal expenditures for payment as of April 26, 2017. A resolution waiving the formal bid process and authorizing the purchase of refuse container lids from Schaefer Systems International in the amount of $15,043.50. A resolution to award the bid for the water treatment plant clarifier number 1 recoating project, including alternates to RP Coatings Incorporated at a total cost of $385,000. A resolution waiving the formal bidding process and authorizing the purchase of a new command staff vehicle in the fire department through the state joint purchasing vendor Morrow Brothers Ford of Greenfield, Illinois, in the amount of $27,984. A resolution authorizing extra work payment in the amount of $60,052.33 to Rowe Construction, a division of United Contractors Midwest, and approval of an associated budget adjustment of $47,901.33 for storm sewer crossing construction at Broadway Avenue and Oak Street, and this is related to the high-speed rail project. A resolution to appropriate $250,000 of the town's allotment of motor fuel tax funds for timber pile repairs on the Belt Drive Bridge. Resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad Company for the passenger rail platforms at Uptown Station, contingent on a one-time maximum fee of $15,000. Oh, yeah. Please call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember Fritzen,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings, Councilwoman Lorenz,
Aye.
Councilman Preston,
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. And I'm remiss, I had forgotten that we had a request for public comment, so we'll take that public comment at this point. And the request was from Mr. Ron Ulmer.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. I'm Ron Ulmer, and I live at 1114 North Linden in Normal. I'm here to just ask 4 or 5 questions today about item F that was on the omnibus agenda, because that work has all taken place near my properties. I have one question. The first question is originally, and I'm going to try and shorten this to keep it real short. Originally anticipated the storm sewer improvements, but since no print permit was found, not the responsibility of the town to pay for the sewer improvements, HSR project would pay. Then all of a sudden it says in there that somehow the permits were discovered. Who discovered the permits, or if you could shed some light on how that happens. Goes on to say that there were the amounts for Broadway and Oak by row, the final cost was $60,051 higher than expected. During HSR construction of the storm sewer crossing, several issues were encountered that resulted in extra work by the contractor, most related to conflicts with existing utilities. At the Oak Street crossing 4 years ago, a water pipe was placed under the tracks. A delay occurred because of conflicts with utilities. During the current construction, 2 more water pipes were placed under the tracks at this location, and 1 bore pit was incorrectly located. So there have been 4 bore pits dug at this location in recent years. I'm wondering how it was still unknown that there were going to be utilities that were not located where this last bore pit for the sewer was, for the storm sewer. The sewer crossing caused equipment to operate on my property beyond the town and the railroad's rights of way, as close as within 60 feet of the foundation of my building. What is the town's policy for compensation for using an owner's property beyond the right of way? The HSR purchased ROW on the north side of 3 of my properties. However, no row was purchased on the west side of this property. Shrubs and landscaping that were in the agreement with the railroad ROW contract that I signed mentioned that certain shrubs and a retaining landscape wall were not to be touched, but they have all been removed as a result of the sewer project. So, you know, what's going to happen there? Who's going to plant the grass seed and all, and then will I be the one responsible for watering it? Also, there's a large area there that actually Pam Reese, 15, 20 years ago, nominated me for a landscaping reward, and that has been all demolished. And I maintain that area, but I lack the compunction to maintain that area at beyond this time. It says a budget adjustment of $47,901 for the storm sewer fund. It says, oh, why was the amount of the projected budget budgeted from the sanitary sewer fund and the budgeted adjustment was from the storm sewer fund? I just found that confusing. And lastly, when the station underpass is built, who will be responsible for cost overruns such as missed permits, if any, and conflicts related to existing utilities? The town, the railroad, or WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff, since they are the ones being paid up to $1.4 million in consulting fee that includes locating the utilities, assuming that my understanding of the agreement is correct. Thank you.
We have no items of general orders tonight, and we have a number of items of new business.
They actually are all general orders. We amended the agenda, so
Oh.
those are all general order items. It doesn't matter, but just.
These are all
to be clear.
general order items. I didn't get an updated agenda. First item is a resolution revoking the South College Village PUD, which is south and east of Hovey and Cottage. Motion for approval? Move approval.
Second.
Discussion on this item?
Staff has if you don't mind, since I think the following 4 items relate to this, we'd like to do a brief presentation, and then we'll respond to questions if that's okay.
Perfect.
Thanks. The items before you tonight pertain to a development that was actually proposed and approved back in 2007. It started out as 18 acres, roughly across from the Jewel Osco in the family video near Hovey and Cottage. At that time, it was approved as a C1 PUD, which is a mixed-use PUD. The concept being that it would be uses targeted at a population 55 and older. At that time, there was only one project that was ready to be developed, and that was an age-restricted apartment complex, which has been built at 1000 South Cottage. The rest of the PUD plan at that time called for 4 other lots that would be located adjacent to Village Court, which is a public street that comes off of Cottage. There was no definite plan for those 4 lots at the time, but they were, again, meant to be targeted at some sort of services or other uses that would pertain to 55 plus. On the far east end of this 18 acres is an area that's really not developable due to soil qualities, et cetera, adjacent to the creek, and that has always been planned as like a prairie planting, some sort of passive recreation for that PUD. So that was back in 2007. In 2015, the developer came back and amended the PUD. The town council approved the removal of 1.5 acres from the southwest corner of the PUD to be developed as a Dollar General. In order to do that, the town council also approved a zoning map amendment so that that property would have C2 neighborhood commercial zoning, and it also had to go through a site plan process so that the neighbors and everybody would see what was going on, and as you know, the Dollar General is there. So that leaves us with about 16.5 acres in that original PUD, of which part is that 55 plus apartment structure. The current proposal is now to look at the rest of the undeveloped land and take a different approach altogether. That doesn't work with this age-restricted C1 PUD. So the concept is to revoke the PUD, what's left of it. That would leave you with 1000 South Cottage, which is the age-restricted apartment. The proposal is to just rezone that to S2 public lands and institutions, which permits age-restricted multifamily. In order, when you have S2 zoning, though, you also need a site plan, so there's also a site plan in the list of actions. That leaves you with the rest of that undeveloped area, and the developer is proposing that that be developed as R1B, so a rezoning to R1B, as a single-family PUD that would be duplexes, all on one lot. So the 5th action would be a preliminary plan for a PUD of these duplexes. You have before you the illustration of what that PUD looks like, how it lays out. You still have access off of Village Court, which is still a public street, although previously it was going to end in a cul-de-sac. Now the way it lays out is Village Court heads east off of Cottage. There's a little a road that goes north off of that with a few of the duplexes located off of that piece of road. And then there's a loop road on the east end of Village Court. And that's where the bulk of the duplexes would be built. Like still on the far east end of the development, the same prairie planting, the same recreational trail through it, et cetera. The units themselves are modest in size. Each one has a 1-car attached garage with a 1-car driveway. So it's 37 duplexes, a total of 74 units. There are an extra 24 parking spaces provided that are like in addition to these driveways. So for visitors or extra family members' cars, et cetera. So 24 extra spaces. And that's really, I think those are the highlights. It's not really complicated in concept, but it does require 5 separate actions.
Questions for staff on this? Ms. Lorenz?
Quick question for you, Marcy. The new road that loops around, does that remain private?
Yes. So the loop road would be private, as would that piece of road that goes north off of Village Court.
Okay.
Mr. McCarthy?
Tell me about this swale. Are we requiring it? It seemed like our ask and the response didn't necessarily line up, and I just was a little confused about what we're trying to do there.
Sure. So for years now, we've been talking about this prairie planting, and we've never gotten past the preliminary plan for this PUD. So there's never been detailed engineering done on that prairie because it wasn't necessary. So that's typical. So early on, we just built in this condition that if this surface drains to the creek, we just want to make sure that it gets designed with the prairie so that, you know, it's not like it suddenly becomes a gravel ditch or something undesirable. And we just referenced, you know, Department of Natural Resources standards because those are the ones that are out there. But it may actually turn out that there is no swale. It's not draining the houses. Those will all be on a storm sewer. So it really just pertains to the prairie. And it was just a way of keeping the eye on the ball when the designer does get around to designing the prairie planting. So.
Okay.
We're just kind of honing in on some details now that it's actually going to get installed.
Okay, good. Seems like we had a lot of back and forth about trees. So it seems like we're varying quite a lot about trees. Is there a challenge with it? It seemed like originally they were it was requiring 118 trees, and they wanted 37, and I think we're up to 74 if I read it right.
Right. So
I think.
in a PUD with this kind of zoning, the community design standards, which include our landscaping requirements, it sets forth a minimum number for the entire development based on the perimeter of the development. So in this case, the math ends up with 118 trees on the site.
Okay.
It was not clear in the early stages of report writing how many trees were going to be appropriate. There was no like specific landscaping plan for the entire property because it's probably going to be developed in phases. So we're probably only going to see all the details on chunks as they come in. So where we're at now is that there's agreement, I believe, to plant some trees along Cottage to screen the backside of those residences, and then along the portion that's adjacent to the lime pond. And the 74 trees that would match up with 74 units, we're okay with not necessarily putting every one in front of every single unit because those yards are fairly small. So we still end up with something less than 118, but there's still trees around all the houses.
Appropriate for the property.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one. The portion of the PUD south of the cul-de-sac on the west edge appears to back up to the Dollar General.
Yes.
Is there any screening, shading plan? Are we concerned about that in any way?
There are some plantings along the back of the Dollar General now. It's not some amazing amount, but they will mature and screen to some degree. There's no lighting on that side and there's no parking. So that's really helpful. I think that tends to be the most intrusive for residences. So, you know, that should probably be okay.
If I recall, when the Dollar General site plan came through as well, we anticipated future development that was probably going to be residential in nature in what's being considered tonight. So they did tend to focus a fair number of their plantings, of Dollar General's plantings along that back property line with that in mind, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Fritzen.
Can you tell me where the parking lots are in the plan? What we have on 11-12 is a condensed thing. Usually we get bigger drawings.
A
and
giant
usually,
piece of paper.
and we didn't this time.
Right,
So
right.
I see all the 74 housing units, but
Right. I actually, if the computer can switch to this screen, I don't know how much this is going to help you, but we'll at least put it on your screen. So you can see here that this gray strip that's extra along the loop road over here is some extra spaces. There's some extra ones down here on this. They're kind of spread out around the curve, and it adds up to a total. And there's another little chunk over here. It adds up to 24.
so they're spread throughout the.
They are. They're not all in one spot.
The shading helps. I can see them
The
now
shading.
that you point them out. So,
Yeah.
and the village court extended to the east once it becomes a private street, but it still is a street down the center of the that?
No, that, the way this
Or is-
drawing looks, it looks like the road goes right through the center of here. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
It doesn't. That's a green space. The street ends where it's shaded gray. It's just that the dark line on the edge of those housing units, it makes it look like the street goes through. You were not the first one to ask
So that's
that.
where some, I think, on the planning commission talked about possibly a actual sidewalk in that
That is where-
area
yeah.
that would connect to the, or at least get you to the public sidewalk on the village court.
Yes, that is the area they were talking about.
Okay. No, in the planning commission minutes, where there was obviously some discussion about how narrow the streets were, and the fact that there's no parking was brought up, and obviously just local traffic. So I'm fine with that, except who enforces the no parking? It's a private street, and are we
good
going to have
question.
neighbors enforcing neighbors? Is that what we're going to rely on there, or how does that work?
And our apologies for not noting this up front, because it was a question of the planning commission as well. This is going to be, the complex or the development is going to be managed by First Site, essentially. This is not going to be sold off individually. And so, somewhat like the Oaks on Hovey, where you have large complexes, they will be the management presence and be responsible for those types of enforcement issues. So, long-term, there's a potential for these to be sold off as individual units. That's not their plan right now. I think the plan now is for them to maintain ownership and to manage these in a rental scenario. So they will be the responsible party probably for garbage collection, snow removal, parking enforcement issues, landscaping, that kind of thing, so.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings. Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Fritzen.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Item 8 is an ordinance rezoning property in the town of Normal at 1000 South Cottage, again having to do with this PUD.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Cummings.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Fritzen.
Aye.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item 9 is a resolution approving a site plan for 1000 South Cottage. Motion for approval.
Move approval?
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on this item. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Fritzen.
Aye.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Item 10 is an ordinance rezoning property in the town of Normal, south and east of 1000 South Cottage, formerly the South Cottage Village PUD. Motion for approval.
Move approval.
Second?
Thank you. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Fritzen.
Aye.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The ordinance is approved. Item 11 is a resolution conditionally approving a preliminary development plan for the J&M PUD, south and east of 1000 South College. Motion for approval.
Move approval?
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Fritzen.
Aye.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 12 is a resolution amending a redevelopment agreement with Mr. Nicholas Africano pertaining to the demolition of the former ISSCS Administration Building and the renovation of the ISSCS, the former ISSCS Infirmary Building within the One Normal Plaza planned unit development. Motion for approval.
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this item? Mr. McBride?
Some questions for Mr. Day, if you could maybe help clarify. Is my understanding that once this agreement that's currently in force expires, which it has or is about to, that it's appropriate that we give 45 to 60 days for Mr. Africano to correct the breach of the agreement?
Correct. After there's a breach, which would be tomorrow, he has until the 2nd to have the building demolished, which probably isn't going to happen. Under the contract, we would then notify Mr. Africano of the breach, and then there's a curative period that would take place. It's 60 days, or if the cure would take longer than 60 days, then an appropriate amount of time, so long as that cure is diligently pursued.
So if work were to begin in the next 60 days, and we have proof that the work is actually underway and it is being pursued diligently, I guess would that then correct the breach?
Probably. Yeah, depending on the specifics of what was actually happening at the site.
So if, and I realize that I'm kind of building hypotheticals upon hypotheticals here, but follow along with me if you would be so kind. So the agreement expires, the property owner diligently pursues an effort to remedy, work gets underway. I mean, we see that work is happening legitimately. Why would an extension be required at that point?
There's a couple of reasons we looked at it. One was just administration to give us more specifics on what would happen when, giving it a specific time period rather than sort of the ambiguous, reasonably, when it reasonably should be accomplished. We estimate that the time in this extension is probably the time that it would be reasonable in any case for him to demolish that building. Another issue is there may be issues with him getting financing if he's in a material breach now without the extension that could affect his ability for financing. So it's cleaner this way, I think, with the same result, to do the extension rather than try to go through the cure period.
Thank you. I guess a comment at this point. I supported this back in September, and a majority of us felt that building is an eyesore, has been so for decades, and barring some sort of intervention will continue to be, because that building is not coming down on its own. I guess they don't build them like they used to. However, the way this is unfolded, I find very disappointing.
Mr. Fritzen?
I would agree with some of Mr. McBride's comments as far as the disappointment, because heard many times pleas from people in the neighborhood, particularly those in North Beach, that have had to live with the eyesore, both in the time Mr. Africano has owned it and prior to that. And so it was, the agreement that is about to expire was not difficult to vote for me, because I think it was time. It was time because it had become a site for vandals, a site for young people to investigate, and we may be just lucky that something worse didn't happen there other than broken windows and trespassing. So it was time to do something about it, and I think to support this extension is really a default vote of yes, not an enthusiastic vote of yes. It's a default position because we have, as Mr. McBride's questions pointed out, that even if we don't extend it and we find Mr. Africano in breach of contract, the legal system is going to drag it out to some extent, and maybe beyond that. If say we don't have this extension, and we have assurances that the demolition is going to start, and then it doesn't, then we're back here trying to do this again. And so I think it's prudent to extend the contract and allow the process to take place. But like I said, it's a default vote of yes. And the other half of it is the commitment to redevelop the infirmary building. And so when we're talking about financing, it's not just financing the demolition and removal of the existing building, which because of the age. There's an asbestos issue there, I'm sure, and until somebody actually gets in there and starts tearing into it, it's difficult to know for sure just how long something like that will take based on past experience. So, but the other part of it is, some investors in the infirmary building remodel, redevelopment, and so we don't want to just remove this. We want that project as well to get underway and be completed. So I think, supporting the extension is the best thing for us to do for our interests in the project.
Ms. Lorenz?
Thank you. I think my comments will really echo Mr. Fritzen and Mr. McBride were already saying, in that this is kind of a bit of a riddle for me, because I didn't vote for this back last fall. It didn't seem like a terribly great deal then. Obviously, we went along and the majority did go for it. Okay, so now presented with this again, a vote against it, which would be my kind of inclination, is a vote for a dilapidated building that's now fenced in to continue to stay there and perhaps incur legal fees. And that doesn't seem like a great option. So I really don't like the situation that we're being put in here. We are financially invested in this, and those precious dollars are getting more and more precious. Since September, we now know that a certain amount of money may be at risk due to the pending nature or precarious nature of the Metro Zone, as was discussed earlier some months ago. So, those dollars are getting more and more precious. And I guess, in principle, I don't like this, but in practicality, I can vote for it. But that's a pretty thin vote. And I guess to those who are involved with this, this needs to get done.
Mr. Preston?
Thanks, Mayor. Building on a couple of the comments made by some of my colleagues up here, another question, kind of clarifying, probably from legal, if we could. So if we do not pass this extension, and if Mr. Africano is in breach of the contract and the 60 or 90-day window comes and goes, and let's say he's not able to correct the breach, then what end goal would we try and accomplish at that point? I mean, in the packet it references, there would be the option of, potential legal action, but to see what end as it relates to that property.
Yeah, there are a couple options under the Illinois Municipal Code we could take under the various vacant building statutes. Bottom line for pretty much all of them is we would end up doing the demolition and then placing a lien on the property. So that's basically any option we choose would involve that. The other options would just be to issue citations for violations of the building code.
If the town, if this scenario ended up happening and the town were to demo itself and put a lien against property, wouldn't you have kind of a net equal result to us reimbursing and then owning the property anyway? Wouldn't there be a lot of similarities in that situation?
Possibly. And again, depends on which particular option we followed. And it would be a court process, so that would probably be a long, drawn-out period. There is what they call a fast-track demolition, but I think our options for getting the reimbursement back would be more limited. So we're probably talking an extended litigation if we pursue the demolition ourselves.
Yeah. So then, thank you. A comment, if I may, then in follow-up to that, much like Ms. Lorenz, I was one who had some concerns, and those kind of stuck with me through the end of the day when this came to us last fall. But now it really seems to me, like we've heard from others around here, that, I don't see a very compelling argument for anything other than approving the extension if it's going to yield the same net result, but just be costlier and timelier and everything else by not doing so.
Mr. McCarthy?
try not to be too redundant on some of the other comments made already. I guess my approach about this the first time and this time has always been one of practicality. It seemed like going the legal route was just going to end it in a protracted timeline to get to the same place and cost us more money. And so it seems to me that really, I believe you called it the default vote, is, and I guess I just want to underline something that Mr. Fritzen said, and I'm not sure that we've discussed it enough, but this is my second time through a campaign cycle where I've listened to people on Beach Street be upset about this property. The first time was, I guess they've contained the young kids that were going in there and potentially hurting themselves and hurting the property and just generally upsetting the neighborhood. Seems to have died down, but the neighborhood's still not very happy. So this is the second time I've knocked on a bunch of doors to listen to people going, when are you going to get something done about this property? And so I think you were right. It was time then, and it's still time now. Thank you.
This has been a long ongoing project, and it's been very difficult for everyone involved. The building has provided numerous challenges in attempts to save it, numerous challenges in attempts to remove it. It's just a tough project, and my vote will reflect pretty much the same way your votes are reflecting. It's whatever gets us to the quickest resolution on this is the best outcome for everybody involved, so that will be my yes vote. Further discussion on the item? Please call the roll.
Councilman Fritzen?
Aye.
Councilman McBride?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lorenz?
Aye.
Councilman Preston?
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Before going to concerns and a motion for adjournment, as we seat a new council here, we have lost our past mayor pro tem, and giving the long tradition of the town of Normal to select the new mayor pro tem, which would be the longest serving seated member of the council, would be Mr. Jeff Fritzen. So at this point, I'll formally announce the appointment of Jeff Fritzen as mayor pro tem for the city, for the town of Normal. And look forward to working further with you, Jeff. Are there comments or concerns before adjournment? Mr. Fritzen?
Yeah, Mr. Ulmer mentioned something that I recall thinking about when I was reading through the packet and failed to highlight it. But when you talk about item F from our omnibus agenda, the discovery of permits that kind of changed the nature of things, and then he asked a question as well that I think is pertinent about the what fund we're paying for this, from. So there were some personal property type things there that I think hopefully those can be resolved and his property restored. But those two things, the permits and the funding, I think are a couple of things that we may as well clarify since we have the time to do that.
I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and Mr. Aldrich is prepared on those questions.
Yeah, several years ago, the railroad team came to us regarding all the crossings of the railroad tracks, water, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, with an analysis. Their initial analysis, showed all these crossings and if they had found permits or no permits for these crossings. So they determined with IDOT that if there was a permit, the municipality would be responsible for the whatever had to be done to get to the railroad standards. So in most cases we looked and we may have found a permit or we didn't find a permit. So both entities looked. We looked and they looked, so the railroad looked as well. So in these two cases, we couldn't find a permit, and at a certain point, the railroad project said, well, we can't find one either. We're gonna proceed with the designs for that project. So they actually performed the designs for these two storm sewer crossings at Oak Street and Broadway. So we looked at the plans and said, looks okay, with the understanding that they were going to do the project. So And it was a surprise to us, and we went to the council at the time, when they said, surprise, we did find a permit for that. So that was a big blow to us, and so they did do the designs, but we were then responsible for the construction of the project. So that's the effect. But neither team initially, meaning the town or the railroad project, could find the permit.
But where did they eventually find a permit?
The railroad found the permit in their archives.
In their
eventually,
archives,
yeah.
okay.
Can you speak to some of the cost overruns and the utility issues that were had? I know it was very complicated.
Cost overruns, yeah, different issues in both locations. But utilities, this project has been plagued by utility issues, and part of that is it's on the railroad. So there's utilities that have been out there for as long as the railroad's been out there, 150 plus years. So it's an area that is plagued by utility issues. And even if a utility knows it's out there, they may not know exactly where it is. So there may be a utility shown on a plan that can't be adequately located sometimes, or they don't go into the effort to locate it at that time during design. So many utilities, you have to dig them up. And so sometimes that's a big issue with the railroad because of the proximity of the tracks or whatever reasons. So that's the case for a lot of these utilities, and it's related to the rails being in close proximity or getting permission just to dig them up. So in some cases, like in this project, when the railroad was torn up, well, then that gave the contractors or the team an opportunity to dig these up and locate them. So we did do some of that work, or the team did some of that work during construction. So, but it's very difficult to locate these adequately without actually digging the utility up. The other instance that happens is there's other utilities that have been abandoned out there. So there's always a question that's asked, is this active or is this not active? So in one case at Oak Street, that actually delayed the project as well. As we hit something, we don't know what it is. So we had to take some time and investigate that. And again, that work is primarily done by the high-speed rail team and not the town. But so that was an issue with the Oak Street crossing where utilities were located. They thought we had to change some designs, but it turns out we didn't, but there was still a delay associated with that project. Mr. Ulmer also talks about the proximity to his buildings, and this was brought up by the contractor when they saw this too. So that happened late, and apologies because this did happen late. But when you do a boring across the tracks, so you're pushing a steel tube underneath the railroad tracks. So you've got to build a boring pit on one side, and in that pit, you lower the pipe sections. You also have a hydraulic ram and an auger. So that operation is all done bit by bit from the one side from this boring pit. So the plans called for a fairly lengthy boring pit, and that's when the contractor called me and said, hey, we're getting pretty close to the building with this boring pit. So we looked at it and we says, what can we do? Can we shorten the boring pit? Or can we encroach on the railroad side a little bit further? So the railroad didn't allow us to encroach on their side, of course, because it would have involved shoring and other expenses. So we decided to shorten the boring pit. So although this was still very close to Mr. Ulmer's property, and we recognize that, we did shorten the pit, which involved cutting the pipe to shorter sections and doing some work there, some additional shoring work and other things to actually shorten the pit and try to get it away from the property as much as possible. I will add, we do have an agreement with Mr. Ulmer, memorandum of understanding. If there's any other effects to his property, we'll take care of them. The contractor, I think, has done a good job in cleaning up the property and is committed to cleaning up the property.
And then the budget, just to explain.
Oh, the budget, that's,
moving target.
initially, these projects were sanitary sewer type projects, the ones we knew about. So we set up a fund. It was in the sanitary sewer fund to fund these projects. We supplemented that fund when these projects came along, and now we're justifying that. Really, these two are storm sewer projects, so we're taking it out of the sanitary sewer fund, funding it from the storm sewer fund.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I do want to acknowledge him. And Mr. Ulmer was, certainly inconvenienced by this project, and we appreciate his he was very patient under the circumstances. It's gone a lot longer than any of us anticipated. He does have a lot of excavation on his property, and we will certainly, if there's issues, once it's all said and done with landscaping, we'll certainly work to get those resolved to his satisfaction. That's certainly always been our intent, but we do appreciate his cooperation.
I think the expectation is that things have always been the way they are today when it comes to knowing where utilities are and how things were built many years ago. You referenced 150 years ago, the railroad, but one of the amazing things I discovered back in the 80s was how much we relied on Sam Wiley to know what was underground. Yeah. And there's a couple of people here who understand what I'm talking about when it comes to that, but there were many times Sam Wiley was Farnsworth and Wiley consulting engineers at the time, and Sam was the town engineer. And he was at every meeting, and whenever a question came up about public utilities, Sam just got up and told everybody where they were. There wasn't necessarily a real good record of it, other than his recollection. And so we're a modern city today, but 34 years ago we were relying on a guy to remember things that had happened in the previous 2 or 3 decades, and so we've come a long way.
And I will say, Mr. Ulmer referenced if we do an underpass type project, we have instructed our consultants whatever means available to locate those utilities, whether it's digging them up or using some sort of infrared sensor, whatever it takes. And there are some technologies that may help with that, but that is one of the goals during the design, if we do something like that, to try to get those utilities located. Yeah.
Thank you. Further comments or concerns? Ms. Lorenz?
Just a comment that I would like to welcome a special guest here who's sitting in the back with my husband, a friend of mine from Germany, Johanna Trinkhaus. Raise your hand. She's been in the States now for about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days up in Chicago. Just came down here today, and I said, welcome to the best small town USA.
All right. Welcome.
I have one item, when you're done. Go
Mr.
ahead.
McBride, and then
Well, I don't want to belabor it, but I think it's worth mentioning one more time that this is an historic occasion for our best little small town USA, and it's a milestone and one that's long overdue. So, and that's all thanks to the hard work of our new colleague. So, congratulations again, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
What a great segue into the fact that it's time to take a new group photo of the council. And is everybody going to be here the 15th? You're not going to be at the 15th. Yeah, we're going to have to, and you're out the first weekend. So we'll have to try to get that done the second meeting in June. Does that work for everybody's first?
Just to make this difficult. No.
You're going to make, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Photoshop at this point.
Okay, and I will also just indicate that on the 15th, we do plan to ask you to come a little bit early and tour the new fire station. It's far enough along that you'll get a good sense of what, we'll get Mr. Fritzen in there, maybe when the pole gets in, so you can slide down the pole. But I know Chief Humer's really looking forward to showing it off, and again, construction is on schedule, maybe a little ahead of schedule, so we're really excited about it. But we'll get information out to you about that. Probably be at 5:30. We'll meet over there and then come back here for a light dinner before the meeting.
Great. Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilman McBride.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cummings.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lorenz.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Councilman McCarthy.
Aye.
Councilman Preston.
Aye.
Mayor Cruz.
Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Scott.
The big line.
Big line.
Yeah, good. Okay, this was at your seat tonight. Oh, somebody, yeah.
Yes. That's been blessed.